Today on Locked On Red Wings, with free agent signings seemingly over, what will Detroit's opening night roster potentially look like?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, hope you had a good 4th of July, man.
You too, brother. You too. Yeah, good hot weekend, but a good weekend. And the Tigers certainly helped my mood as well.
For a second, it didn't look like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, even on Sunday, even if they lose that, it's still a series win in Cleveland. I'll take it. But, yeah, beautiful weekend, beautiful results on the field, and a beautiful conversation today that I think is always kind of one of our favorite episode series of, any off-season, preseason, summer episode, we'll say.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because it's simultaneously a really fun episode to do and, not going to lie, a really easy episode for the offseason. Is opening night roster predictions with the free agency signings, done for the most part, right? Obviously, Yzerman did his
all the
media availability. Yeah. So there might be a couple other small ones trickling in.
I'm sure there will be, two-way contracts or something like that still, but yeah.
Right. And hopefully, as Yzerman stated himself, they're going to start kicking tires on GMs next week.
Right.
Or this week, I guess, at this point. And hopefully we see a couple more acquisitions. But right now, the Red Wings have made a couple of additions. They've had a couple of subtractions. We wanted to take a look at their roster and what that opening night roster lineup could look like. So let me share my screen. Puckpedia, there we go. Change the background, and I'll zoom in a little bit too. So
Puckpedia is amazing, okay? But every time we do this and I see Puckpedia, I just think, rip cap friendly, man. That's... What a dog. What an absolute G.
Well, Puckpedia has done a fantastic job. Fantastic filling that gap, and they've really stepped their game up. And in some ways, I think they've even surpassed them as well.
They had to step up because they realized they were now, they had an opportunity to be the go-to, and I think they took that and ran with it. Yeah, no disrespect toward Puckpedia at all. It just, every time we do this, it just makes me think of
rest in peace. Yeah.
Whatever Cap Friendly's up to these days over with the Capitals organization.
Yeah, of course, there's the Stanley Cap too, which is another useful website.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit more minimalistic, which for some people they prefer that. But anyways, we digress. We're off topic. We only have 30 minutes to talk about the whole roster, so let's get to it. Let's just start right top of the we'll go through the forward core, then defensive core, then goaltending, just because. One, I think that's how most people's brains work, but it's also how it's presented here on Puckpedia. I think that we have a really strong conversation, a really fascinating conversation right off rip here with the top line, because notably, one of the biggest question marks on this team did not get filled through free agency because it couldn't. Like Elliot Friedman said on 32 Thoughts on the Sunday episode, their final big 3-hour show before heading into the offseason, Red Wings asked about Ehlers. They weren't even given a seat at the table to give him an offer. They just straight up were told no, and then everybody else was gone. Yzerman said that himself too. So the Red Wings really, I think, made the wise decision of not overpaying for mediocrity to force a hole to be filled, but I do think that they need to address this via trade. But as of right now, you're looking at just internal options to fill left wing on line one. Because, the rest of the line one is chalk, right? Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, we can agree on that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, in my eyes, and you can push back on me if you want, Scotty, I think you have 3 candidates for top line left wing with a dark horse fourth option. My 1 and 2, this is 1 and 2, or it's 1A and 1B, and then 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. I think you're looking at either Andrew Kopp or Marco Kasper as your top line left wing. It brings me no joy saying Andrew Kopp is your top line left wing, but looking at your options, I think if it's not Marco Kasper, it's going to be Andrew Kopp or vice versa, because you need one of those two guys to center your second line. And whoever isn't is probably your best candidate to be that top line. Because Andrew Kopp, for what it's worth, he doesn't come with the quite the same pace as Marco Kasper, but he's very good at getting into the corners and winning those puck battles. He's got a great two-way game, which also fits the identity that top line is starting to build, right? Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin have been growing their defensive games as well, especially as Patrick Kane and DeBrincat's lines have been getting more offensive zone deployments. So I think that Andrew Copp could fit as a stopgap, not long-term, as a stopgap this season if they don't address it through trade either. What are you feeling, where are you leaning on the Marco Kasper, Andrew Copp debate?
Yeah, so my first question is, are we, and I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. I just ask this because I feel like in a perfect world, this is kind of the answer. Are we 100% certain that Cat and Kane will be sharing a line together?
I am pretty 100% certain. They played together, I think, all of last season when they were both healthy, and they just have that chemistry.
For sure, and I agree with you. I think the reason I start with that is just because, honestly, like in a perfect world, I think that Cat being the left wing would kind of solve a lot of the problems.
For sure.
However, I understand that to get the most out of everyone involved, that it makes sense to keep them together. So that leaves us with, I agree with you. I think it's Kasper and Copp. The dark horse I want to kind of throw out there. Don't bully me, okay? How ridiculous is the notion that JVR gets some time at top line wing?
Yeah, so he's not a guy I even considered, just because of his.
I feel like most people didn't, and I'm not saying he is the answer. I'm not trying to be like this. This is what the Wings should do. I honestly like pretty significantly dislike both of the two options that are at our disposal. I don't think it's going to be Cat because he's going to play with Kane. I want Kasper to be 2C. And I hate the thought of Copp being a top line minute getter. So my brain is trying to think of any other options. And with the defense that Larkin and Raymond bring, and with the point producing ability that JVR still has, it was a thought. However, I also think that the odds of giving him first line minutes for 82 games is slim to none, and that kind of eliminates that right off the bat.
Right. I mean, my third option was Elmer Soderblom, and I give the Wind Wheel podcast, I listened to them the other day, they brought this up as an idea too, and I thought it was interesting because I think he has the highest surprise you ceiling out of those guys, right? But I just don't see it as a serious option because I don't think he's going to have the pace to play with the top line. He's just, unfortunately, he's got long strides, which helps make up for a lot of it, but he doesn't have the defensive game and he doesn't have quite the speed to play with Larkin and Raymond. And my dark horse was Nate Danielson making the team out of camp and him being your option. But I just, as fun as those two options are.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. Would you rather have Danielson top line wing, Kasper 2C, or vice versa?
Well, Kasper 2C, that's at this point that's a more proven commodity. We know what he brings, and Danielson likely would need time to acclimate, right? And a lot of these guys, Kasper didn't come in, and he did come in and play.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Time to acclimate to me is not putting him on the top line, but I do understand
on the
your
wing
point because center.
Dylan Larkin did. Dylan Larkin played top 6 minutes on the wing immediately. That's when it comes to your top prospects. That's not a bad way to do it, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you. I'm not saying this in a disagreement mindset. I just I think I'm not sure comparing him to Dylan Larkin is necessarily fair on either end, but I agree with what you're saying.
Higher draft pick. Anyways, the thing I want to say though, because again, it's between Copp and Kasper in my head. All these other options are fun, but the thing is Copp is much better in the center face-off circle, and he did play better between Kane and Cap before he got hurt. So he's not a bad 2C option, but I want Kasper to play 2C simply because of the fact that he played so well in that role for that line And for his own development and growth, I want him to play in that role. But I could see a scenario where they go with Kopp because he's just the more established center, and he's much better in the faceoffs. And then Casper, at least as a stopgap, is your top-line winger. We have to make a decision for the sake of the exercise.
For sure, and I agree. For me, I don't think that experienced and established are the same. I think Casper looked great as 2C down the stretch last year, and I would argue that he is more established in the year 2025 at center than Andrew Kopp. Just because Kopp has played more games there doesn't mean he's going to be better there. I would significantly prefer Casper to be the 2C, which I guess leaves us at Kopp at first line wing.
Okay. Nice thing about Kopp, too, is, he can slide in and take center faceoffs when need be, especially on the penalty kill, but can't talk too much on this more. I think it's going to be one of those two in either position. Honestly, if the listeners want to flip-flop them, go right ahead. Or if you have another option, go for it. But we got to get to a break. So when we come back, we'll try to knock out the rest of the forward course. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Scotty, I don't know if you saw this. Tarek Skubal named two-time All-Star just after we began recording. And you can bet on Tarek Skubal's odds to win the Cy Young for the second straight year at FanDuel. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, line 2, right? If we've talked about filling the left wing on line 1, basically fills your 2C, right? We just had that discussion, and we are in the belief that Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane will then continue to play as the wingers, centering on the opposite sides of Marco Casper in this case. Are we good on that then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we move on to the third line, and I think your depth gets a little bit more interesting because this is where we've injected some new blood. Mason Appleton to a 2-year deal, James Van Riemsdyk to a 1-year deal with performance bonuses as well. You also have Michael Rasmussen, Jonathan Berggren, Elmer Soderblom, Carter Mazur, Austin Watson as your options for the bottom 6. I think that if you have Kopp and Marco Casper in your top 6, that means that JT Compher is without a doubt your 3C, which I think makes sense, assuming, again, he's on the roster come the start of the season.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, really.
The question then becomes what do you value more on the third line? Do you value more James Van Riemsdyk and Mason Appleton to create a little bit of a checking line with Mason Appleton's physical play and his ability to get the puck in transition, fire a lot of shots on that, and JVR's ability to get down low to deflect those shots? Or do you want to bet on your youth a little bit more? Jonathan Berggren's lethal shot, Elmer Soderblom's long reach and silky smooth hands, or maybe even Carter Mazur's grit ability. He would help make a great checking line as well. What do you see for the wingers on either side of JT Compher?
Well, I think JVR is kind of a slam dunk. I really think it's the other side that's kind of the revolving door. I mean, how would you feel about a JVR, JT Compher, Elmer Soderblom line?
Yeah, I mean, Elmer Soderblom can play either side. I think that he has played more left wing with the Wings, if I'm recalling, just trying to, watch replays in my head of him playing. It seems like a lot of those highlights came from the left side. I'm cool with it. I'm not sure, because he has such a skill upside. I'm not sure what they'll want out of that line. Because this is where it's tough, too, because it's players we haven't necessarily seen a ton of either. I feel like it's going to be... Just looking at the depth here. It very well could be Elmer Soderblom on the right side. I was thinking Mason Appleton just solely based on the contract you signed him to and the expectation with him, right? He has, 25 points last year at a career high of, I think, 37, somewhere in that range. I thought he was pretty well suited to play on the third line. I'm not entirely convinced of the combination there, but I'd have to see it and see what comes out of training camp on that one. For me, the fourth line is where it's even more interesting because who do you kick out? I think Austin Watson's probably in the minors, if I'm being real with you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's just bump him down. We'll send him down. And Carter Mazur, this is a guy that we want in an everyday lineup spot, correct?
I do.
And I think he's going to earn it. I think it'll likely be on a fourth line capacity. I think he's going to have the tenacity to help make a nice fourth line checking role. But if JT Compher's your third line center, then who is your fourth line center? It's Michael Rasmussen as of right now?
I mean, yeah. Yeah. And that's where we circle back to the top line conversation, right? Is Kopp the... It's so crazy to have this dynamic where like Kopp is either a top line wing or a third or fourth line center, like probably third line center. Like it's a large gap between role, but that's kind of the situation the Wings find themselves at the present moment, at least.
So then the question, okay, so we got our centers figured out. I want Jonathan Berggren to work out, but I just haven't seen enough of him for me to be convinced he's an everyday player.
There is no chance with the 13 forwards that are on the screen right now. There is no chance anybody else, on opening night at least, is the 13th forward other than him.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Appleton stays on the third line and Elmer Soderblom plays on the fourth line. I just think JT Compher and JVR are slam dunk third line players, and it's just trying to figure out who is going to play on that right wing is the tough
and
one.
I will say, for as frustrating as an off season as it's been so far, I think at full health, which won't last, as we are all very well aware, players will get hurt. But the depth, that bottom seven, you can call it, including Berger at 13th forward, I think is substantially deeper than the bottom seven was. Substantially is probably being hyperbolic, but like I think that is a deeper lineup card than it was a year ago. It just it comes at the expense of Andrew Kopp having to play top line, which I don't think anyone's happy about.
And I can definitely see Elmer Soderblom and Mason Appleton swapping. It's a tough one for me because I'm not quite sure what the identity of these lines would be. It depends on what they want the identity to be here. But I can see that third line working. I can also see Elmer Soderblom bumping up to the third line for a little bit more offense and Mason Appleton bumping back down for, I can't say a little bit more defense. He's all right. He's a PK.
I mean, that fourth line is, that's some dogs, right? Like you're talking about Mazur, which is like very much kind of that physical, grinder type of player. Rasmussen and Soderblom obviously give you size. Like I really do think that they, at a minimum, try to make that line work. Whether it sticks throughout 82, they're all really young players. The Wings are really young players that we're still trying to see what happens with them. So I think that could get shuffled. Honestly, again, like the whole bottom seven's going to get shuffled quite a bit. Berger is going to get playing time, so trying to find, spots for him is going to be interesting. Is JVR at his current age and salary really an 82-game player? Probably not. Like you probably give him some nights off here and there. That's going to leave for opportunities for Berger. And then, like how Appleton for almost $3 million, like how I don't know, solidified is he going to be in the lineup card too? I think these are all questions that preseason and early season will give us the answers to.
Yeah, and so this is where we're at right now. And this is we're like not super confident these are what the lineups look like, but this is just what we're thinking right now for the forward core before we move on to the defense. Yeah, Larkin, Kopp, and Raymond. Kopp, of course, can be flip-flopped with Marco Kasper, who is currently centering the second line, with Kane and DeBrincat on either side. You got Compher as your 3C with Appleton and JVR on either side. Rasmussen centering line 4 with Soderblom and Mazur on either side. And then Jonathan Berggren as your 13th forward. But like Scotty just said, anything can change, and things will change on a night-to-night basis. They will get Berggren games. I'm sure at some point they'll try Kopp at the 2C. But as far as a opening night lineup goes, this is what my gut is closest to what my gut is feeling. My gut's not entirely sure on some of these, But this is as close as my gut is feeling on what the Red Wings lineup could look like on opening night. Scotty, let's move on to segment 3, and we'll talk about the defense and the goaltending. Stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. All right, so let's get this out of the way first, Scotty, because I think the goaltending conversation is very short. John Gibson is, again, assuming health, is your starting goaltender on night 1, correct?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, not much of a conversation to be had. You traded for him to upgrade your goal, upgrade you between the pipes. So if he's not your starting goaltender on night 1, I mean, it won't be the end of the world or anything, but it's just like that's what you acquired him to be.
For sure.
Now let's take a look at our defense, and this is where I get the most depressed because the defensive core did not really get upgraded, and there's not really a good conversation to be had about that top pairing. Like there was the what internal candidates do the Red Wings have for the top line left wing. Don't even get that conversation really with the defense. I think as the defense is set up right now, you can't in good conscience put Simon Edvinsson and Moritz Seider together because who's going to play your second pair? Like you have to spread out the wealth a little bit,
right,
or you have to be giving only Seider and Edvinsson all the most difficult minutes. So I think starting out, as much as I do not want to see this again, you probably got Sherrod on your top pair left side D, which is a massive problem, but I don't know who else you put there, because if you put Edvinsson there, then who do you have left for your second pair?
That's a great question, Brian.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
I think this is going to be the biggest Achilles heel of the Red Wings this season.
Which, right, we've been saying since this last season was still going on, and I'm sure we'll continue to say throughout the upcoming year. I mean, I don't know. End of sentence. I don't know. This is a complete bleep show, to be honest with you. You can do what is currently on the screen, and you can just bring Ben Sherratt back to be, partners with Moritz Seider for the, third season in a row. Obviously, there's been some, blending at times, but, that has been a thing that the Wings have done on a consistent basis for the better part of 3 seasons. You can do that again. Or you can move Edvinsson, as you mentioned, up to the first pair because that was such a dynamic and impressive first pair. I don't think you can afford to, though. I really don't. With how thin the blue line is, I think you have to separate them because you can't just have your entire bottom 4 be Sherratt, Johansson, Gustafsson, JBD/Hall. Right. I don't think you can afford to do that. I don't think for 2/3 of a game you can afford to not have either Edvinsson or Seider on the ice. So I think you put Edvinsson and Aljo together like you did last year. That was a pair that worked pretty well for a decent amount of time. That leaves pretty much Ben Sherratt as your only option for top pair, and then it's the revolving door of those bottom 3 in the last pair.
You are lowering the ceiling of your top pair to raise the floor of your second pair.
Correct, 100%. That's a great way to put it.
That is what the Red Wings have to do to, as you said, make the other 2/3 of the hockey game playable. And it sucks because, Ben Sherratt's he's not as bad as Red Wings fans make him out to be, but he is certainly over-deployed in a top pair role, and it makes his flaws shine through a lot brighter. Ben Sherratt, honestly, at this point, he'd be we said this about Jeff Petrie too, a tremendous third pair defenseman.
Right. I think Ben Sherratt would be a beautiful third pair left side. Beautiful. I mean, he can even do both. You can put him with Gustafsson and just never put them on the ice. I think he would be wonderful in that role if he was playing, 9 to 12 minutes a night. But he's going to play 24, and that's just ridiculous.
Well, and that's part of the reason why you can keep doing it is he's capable of playing 24 minutes a night. He might not be the most effective, but there's not a lot of defensemen in the league who can play that many minutes a night.
Sure.
So it's just kind of like that's your default option, unfortunately. Because if you do, let's say you want to capitalize on the ceiling of pair 1 and you put Edvinsson and Seider together, well, now your second pair is Johansson and Sherratt. And both of those guys can flip-flop. They can play on either side. That's fantastic. But I'm just not sure that would be the smartest option because part of the reason why Albert Johansson is capable of playing in the second pair when he did was because of the tremendous chemistry he had with his partner in Simon Edvinsson. Because I'm also of the belief that Albert Johansson, as much as I love him, he's a great puck-moving defenseman, but I think he is a great third-pair puck-moving defenseman. I don't think long-term in his career he has, and if I'm wrong, I'd gladly eat it, because I'm happy when I'm wrong in ways that benefit the Red Wings.
For sure.
But I think one of the only reasons he's capable of playing in that second pair is because of the fact that he had such great chemistry with Simon Edvinsson. They clicked. It's like the Cat and Kane thing. I mean, Cat would be a top line guy if Kane wasn't around, likely, but it's because their chemistry is so good that they play together. And it's the same thing happening on the second pair here. So again, you're lowering the ceiling of your top pair to raise the floor of your second pair. And then that leaves you, it's not ideal. It's far from ideal. That's why, for me, the Red Wings' greatest need to address this offseason via trade is a top four defenseman, which is why it stung so much when the Red Wings didn't get Keandre Miller. But I digress. That's your top two pairs. That's unfortunately going to be how it is unless another upgrade comes later into the season. I can see them pairing up Seider and Edvinsson and just saying, let's capitalize on that ceiling, but I don't think it's a strategy that is going to be able to be sustained through 82 games.
Well, and the not counter, because I agree with you, but the to piggyback off that, what strategy with those 7 defensemen is sustainable through 82?
True.
Right.
Hey, but we're talking about game one, so
yeah, we're talking right. We're talking about game one, and
I'm getting ahead of myself.
It's July 7th. Like there is time for all of this to change and for the Wings to continue to do stuff. But as it stands right now, with again with free agency behind you, it looks like this.
Bleak. Now, where I think that there is more upside now is the third pair. I think Jacob Bernard-Docker, I maybe undersold a little bit because I was looking mostly he didn't get qualified. They signed him for such a small amount. Buffalo fans were not happy that they let JBD walk without a qualifying offer.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure out why they wouldn't just bring him back, especially because he'd be so cheap. This is a player that has more upside than Justin Holl. Now, low bar. A little like Justin Holl, like
right.
we've very well discussed on here. But I think Jacob Bernard-Docker has the opportunity to really surprise us as Red Wings fans. He's got a lot of upside that other podcasts have really gone into. I think he has the ability to really cement himself on the third pair on the other side of Erik Gustafsson, and kind of they're going to be a sheltered pair regardless. So they might with that combination of Erik Gustafsson and JBD might thrive in those sheltered minutes. So I kind of look forward to that, and I think he is your third pair right side option.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Hall then is the 7th D-man
in the press box.
Yep.
So Scotty, I mean that's basically it. Your defensive pairs are Ben Sherratt, Moritz Seider, Simon Edvinsson, Albert Johansson, Erik Gustafsson, and JBD, with Justin Holl as your 7th D-man. Do you have anything else you want to bring to the table?
No, I don't bring anything else to the table. I think looking at this lineup card, when you want to compare it to how last season ended, I think the goalie situation is improved.
For sure.
The forward depth, I think, is slightly better. The blue line makes me want to projectile vomit. And the top end of the top 6 of the forward group is certainly no better than it was. It's literally the same people. So, yeah, like that's kind of where you're at. You improved in that. You improved your bottom 7 a little bit on the forward group. You did not improve your blue line really in any way, shape, or form. And now you got the rest of the offseason to try to change some of those things.
Yes. I agree with what you're saying. I think that, so we talked a lot as the offseason began and even as the season was winding down about the biggest needs that this team had, and every single area of the team it needed to be improved. Top 6, you had a huge hole. Top 4, you had a huge hole. Your depth was not providing a lot of either offense or defense, really. And I think that, and goaltending, of course, Yzerman did the almost bare minimum, right, that he could with free agency We did the grade on Friday's episode. I gave him a C+, you gave him a C. I think The Athletic gave him a B-. He improved the bottom six. JVR raises the floor of your bottom six. Mason Appleton raises the floor of your bottom six. It's better depth. That's you look at the players who went out. Tarasenko, improvement. Crazy to say this, but
right.
Improvement over Tarasenko, improvement over Christian Fischer. Congratulations on retiring. By the way,
man.
You love to see a player take their own happiness into account. He could have played for another 5 years, and he decided, you know what, I'm happy. I want to get into a family business, spend more time with my kids. Yep. I love that. It's an improvement over Tyler Mott. So your bottom six is going to be more effective. And they got no depth scoring out of that bottom six at all last season, and they were terrible at helping the defensemen. As much as we harp on the defensemen, the forwards were all across the board were sometimes useless in the defensive zone at handling passes, transitioning for breakouts, engaging in corner battles that help the defensemen, and I think they're better at that. Like Mason Appleton, that's kind of his niche. That's why he was brought in, is to help get that puck out of the defensive zone. He fires a lot of pucks at net. JVR is great at 5-on-5 scoring in tight, which is something the Red Wings were terrible at last season. So the floor of this bottom six has improved, and he didn't spend a lot of money to do it. He didn't invest in anyone long term, so there's still the ability for youth to force their way into the lineup. They're not roadblocked. Goaltending is obviously a huge upgrade. That's hyperbolic. Is an upgrade.
For sure.
It's just those big holes, man. So I think this team is better on the margins, incrementally better. Same things we said last year. It's just the problem is you can be marginally better, you can be incrementally better, and you brought this up on Friday's episode, is sure, you can be better than yourself last year, but you're not competing with yourself. You're competing with the other teams in the Atlantic, and who besides Buffalo and maybe Boston got worse this offseason? Like, we might be 5 points better, which would have gotten us to the threshold in this season, but the threshold this season may be rising.
Right.
So it's...
Hey, got a month until, the roster is genuinely, well, I guess the roster's not ever super actually solidified, but you got time to make some moves as you stated earlier. Yzerman said he'd start circling for some trades here this week, so we'll see how the rest of July goes. But yeah, I mean, this on paper, I don't think. I don't think this roster is substantially better than it ended last season, but
no, and I think Yzerman recognizes that.
Yeah.
It's again, like you said, this is July 7th. It's a fun conversation to have, although it doesn't feel very fun by the end of it. But it's a fun conversation to have, but there's a lot of time for a move to be made. And I will again repeat that I think a move has to be made to at least bring somebody in to try to help this team take a more significant step forward. A little baby step forward when everyone else is taking a step and a half to 2 steps is not going to be enough.
For sure.
All right, final thoughts?
We ball, baby.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.